Another great day in space. Hey guys, everyone. Just give a second. I need to check if the audio is properly set. There's a delay of 30 seconds on YouTube, so say something and then make a cup of tea, huh? Okay, the audio seems to be working. Just give a few minutes for people to join in, if anyone is watching, really, because it seems to me that I'm just doing this for my own fun or something. It's really hard to have people watching. In the meantime, I'm gonna finish some adjustments. Yeah, it's too late for that. Use this though. Yeah, that's better. Okay, I see a giant gap in the green screen, but it's behind me. I'm just gonna cover it with the chair. The rest looks pretty good. So, yeah, before I start, and just hold on a sec because I'm gonna start the Facebook Live as well. Where is it? Sure. I swear to God, I really need to kick these cats out of here. Okay, alright, where was I? Create a post, I guess. That's the thing. For me, personally, Facebook is making things extremely complicated when it shouldn't. Okay, come on, numbers. All right. And so where is it? This one? Live video. Oh, I see. Okay, so that's... Should be okay, I guess. All right. Well, anyway, now it's on Facebook as well. Look, you choose whatever you prefer. Personally, I would watch the YouTube link live because it's just a better angle. Of course, everything is angled for the main camera, not for the Facebook thing. Now, you can of course leave comments during the show. I will try to keep my eye on both windows, but I don't want to turn my head too often because, as you noticed, I don't place too many edit points these days in my shows. So there's a purpose for that. I don't want to kind of interrupt myself too much. But I do reply to the comments later though. So anyway, if you leave it, there's a high chance that I will reply you eventually. Okay, just give a couple more minutes and then I'll start. So today I'm well, I'm going to talk about the emissions in 2018 and then a potential projected path forward. So it's a quite of questionable show today because we don't really know. That's the thing. But that's the beauty of science. You don't always know the answer. You have to come to the answer. My health recently has been not so great. That's That's kind of one of my complaints usually when I sometimes get a comment from a person, and sometimes I get a first-time viewer and they really don't understand like anything of what I'm doing. So you know, I promote the page to people who like my page and their friends. Well, maybe you have strange friends, because usually when I join a page, I'll say during the show again, but when I usually join a Facebook page, I check it out, you know. I don't just see the first post and I stop at that. No, I check out the page. I try to see what it's all about. It's like in the news. You can't just have one source of information. You have to surround yourself with information and compare it, and then hopefully you come to a logical conclusion. And I think next week I will do a show about this one guy. He's a member of kind of philosophy pages on Facebook, and I'm pretty sure he's at least an agnostic. Maybe an agnostic atheist, I don't know. But, you know, he portrays himself as the guru of logic. Nothing pretentious there. And yeah, he just makes a lot of logical fallacies, and it seems to me that this is one of the people that read, oh, I should say, half read the first chapter in a philosophy book and was satisfied with that. And probably the textbook covered things like argument validity, and he was satisfied with that. That's enough for me. That's enough information. So I don't need to dig further. And argument validity for me means absolutely nothing, because an argument can be valid but absolutely insane. So anyway, I'll try to cover that next week. I've been delaying it for quite a while, because the guy annoys me, honestly. You know, I have to prepare it, so I have to watch it again. I have to see his face, listen to his voice. All right. Okay, well, why don't I start that, because I still have things to do today, many things to do, actually. And so, I'm just gonna, yeah, wow, that's okay, I guess. Yeah, it's actually pretty good, better than last time. I try to learn from things each show, so. All right, well, why don't I start that? But unfortunately, my nose is starting to leak. Okay. Yeah, I see that. It's just a little bit here. That's the wonders of green screen. Hopefully one of my cats doesn't suddenly pop up from there. Like The Shining style. Which is without the hammer, of course. Alright, pardon me for a moment. Like I said, my health is not fantastic. It's really up and down, and I wish people who, you know, watch my show, I wish they kind of understood that. And they would if they read my previous post. That's what I'm saying. Don't just see the first thing and stop at that. See the rest, because I talked about that before. I said it all. All right. Okay, so why don't we start this? I'm just gonna stop this stupid counter thing. Don't need it. I don't need Skype also. It's gonna make noises. All right, turn more. I'm just gonna check that the first picture is there. It is. Okay. And I need to get the date, which would be, oh, March 8th. Man, it's been a while since the last show. Okay, I got this too. All right, let's get this on the road. All right, so 3. Just, yeah, sometimes get confused with the numbers. if you have some kind of audio problems, do let me know, because I'm not recording this, it's streaming, and if something goes wrong and I don't see it, then I pretty much lose the entire show because it will have no audio. So just let me know if there's an issue. I can only, well, okay, never mind. All right, so 3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, it's JC and welcome to another exciting episode of Age of Reason. Today is episode 41. It's March the 8th, 2019. Just before I start, I'd like to promote my book once again, Beyond the Obscure. Please get it. It's available on Amazon. The ebook is pretty cheap. Please check out my art as well on Redbubble. So today I'm going to talk about climate change again. I have a lot of articles about it, so it's probably I have enough for the year actually. So, but I do have a few on religion as well, so I want to go back to that when I can. So before I start today, I'd like to go over a post, or comment actually I should say, that was left over during my last show, and it's just pretty funny. So there's this guy Vernon, and he says, I wasted 10 minutes before I gave up. This guy had better do work on his style if anyone is going to listen to him. Pictures of typhoon damage Pictures of typhoon damage in Japan accompanied by a bunch of stammering isn't going to sell the product. First of all, I'm not trying to sell a product, so already that's a fallacy right there. Secondly, unfortunately, and that's what I've been saying for a while, in my view, people's attention span has been absolutely ridiculous lately. I mean, man, if you can't focus on something longer than 2 minutes, that's a problem with you, not me. So he claims that he watched 10 minutes, that's half of my previous show. He claims that he watched half of it, yet he already clearly didn't understand that the picture I showed was from the Philippines and not from Japan. So this shows how much your attention skill sucks, okay? So that's not my fault. That's unfortunately most people's fault these days. Everybody's looking for some kind of shorter clips. That's why these YouTubers, right? The classic YouTubers absolutely went nuts on the cuts. It's a cut every 5-10 seconds. And apparently that sells, you know? That's what people like these days. But I absolutely refuse to do it this way, because I absolutely refuse to dumb things down. You can get enough dumb things out there, so I'm not going to contribute to that fire. I just want to cover that very quickly. Okay, so today the article is Are we living through climate change's worst case scenario? And it was posted on The Atlantic, if I'm not mistaken. And basically it interviews a researcher from Stanford. And here we have a picture actually. Man, I'm sure that Vernon guy certainly is going to confuse it again. This picture is from a power station in Poland, from a place called Bełchatów. And it was the site of the UN 2018 climate conference. So I actually looked it up because I was curious. This picture doesn't look very promising, to be honest. So I looked it up, and in Wikipedia it says this. In 2007, the Worldwide Fund for Nature ranked the power station in Europe's 11th most inefficient power station due to carbon dioxide emissions of 1.09 kilo per kilowatt hour of energy produced, and the highest absolute emitter with 30.1 million tons of CO2 per year. So it's a pretty dirty power plant. And if you think it got better, think again, because in April 2014, the European Commission ranked Bełchatów Power Station the most climate-damaging power plant in the European Union, with CO2 emissions of roughly 37.2 million tons in 2013. So just bear that in mind. The year 2018 was not an easy one for the planet. Sure, wind and solar energy kept getting cheaper. That's true. In quite a few places, solar is now much cheaper to get than fossil fuel. Also, the funny thing is, every time I hear complaints about, reducing CO2 and coal plants and stuff like that, Just one moment. Shh. Oh, wait. I'm just gonna redo that part. So in a lot of places, solar is already cheaper than coal, and people are switching to that because it's all market driven, right? You always pick the one that's cheaper as long as you get the same quality. But the funny thing I find is this. There's a lot of people that complain about CO2, right? So coal plants and like natural gas. But I'd like to ask you a question. And if you're an honest human being, you'd know the answer. But I really doubt that's the case. So here's the question. Do you think that there are more, I mean, I'm talking about the US, okay? So do you think there are more jobs in coal and natural gas than solar these days? Please answer. Because if your answer is yes, then you're just wrong and you don't know about the topic. I don't know the people who watch this show. That's the thing. I don't know you personally. I only know a few people who comment regularly. So I don't know who my audience, who these people are. There's a lot of people, for example, during the Hillary Clinton campaign. Okay, I'm talking about a different thing now, but there were paid trolls that went on Facebook pages and basically smeared other candidates or posted propaganda against the candidates. So they were paid to do that. So I would not be surprised if there are people who come to my page who just happen to be also paid by the fossil fuel industry to go on all these pages, not just my page, and then post propaganda, post lies, post misinformation. I would not be surprised at all. If you're not paid and you still post misinformation about the topic, then you're just doing harm to humanity. You're misinformed and you're miseducating people, which, it's shame on you. Shame on the people who buy your crap as well. So that's happened, and the electric car became America's best-selling luxury vehicle. They're talking about the Tesla Model 3 here. But the most important metric of climate health, the amount of heat-trapping gas entering the atmosphere, got suddenly and shockingly worse. I talked about that on the last show. I gave the example of China, where some sites were unfinished, and then in the latest satellite photos, they were absolutely finished and maybe already in operation. I would not be surprised. So it's definitely emissions are rising. Not everywhere, but in most places, the places that are important anyway. In the United States, carbon emissions leapt back up, making their largest year-over-year increase since the end of the Great Recession. This matched the trend across the globe. According to two major studies, greenhouse gas emissions worldwide shot up in 2018, accelerating like a speeding freight train, as one scientist put it. So the US emissions do remain below the 27 peak, but that is one of the few bright spots in the data. Global emissions are now higher than ever, and the 2018 statistics are all the more dismal because greenhouse gas emissions had previously seemed to be slowing. That's the thing. We've actually kind of curbed them, but over the past year, they did increase. Yeah, I'm just reading a comment here from the chat. That's I agree. Yeah, that's true. The religious people, a lot of them, except unless you're a pastor or a preacher, that's your job to fool people and make millions of dollars, especially in the U.S., where they can crowdfund to get a private jet, which happened. They just believe in something and are very passionate. That's true. I don't disagree at all. Many economists expect carbon emissions to drop somewhat throughout the next few decades, but maybe they won't, and that's the thing. That's what I've been saying before the show. This is a bit speculative area here because we are dealing with an unknown territory. We don't know. Sometimes you hear the best case scenario, but how about we also think about the worst case scenario? Why not? If 2018 is any indication, meekly positive energy trends will not handily reduce emissions, even in developed economies like the United States. It raises a bleak question. Are we currently on the worst case scenario for climate change? And one scientist, so Rob Jackson, he works at Stanford. He's the chair of the Global Carbon Project. He says we're actually a lot closer than we should be. I can say that with confidence. When climate scientists want to tell a story about the future of the planet, they use a set of 4 standard scenarios called representative concentration pathways, or RCPs. Now, this is important because the rest of the article mentions RCPs all the time, so you have to really understand what it is. RCPs are ubiquitous in climate science, appearing in virtually any study that uses climate models to investigate the 21st century. Each RCP is assigned a number that describes how the climate will fare in the year 2100. Generally, a higher RCP number describes a scarier fate. It means that humanity emitted more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere during the 21st century, further warming the planet and acidifying the oceans. So the best case scenario is called RCP 2.6, and the worst is 8.5. So the higher it goes, the worse it gets. That's pretty much all you have to understand from here. God help us if 8.5 turns out to be the right scenario. Well, I can guarantee you that God will not help us. Because why doesn't he help right now if he could? Under RCP 8.5, the world's average temperatures would rise by about 5 degrees Celsius, or nearly 9 degrees Fahrenheit. That's an inconceivable increase for global temperatures, especially when we think about them being global average temperatures. The scenario could still be in the planet's future, according to Zeki Hausfather, who is another climate scientist. He works for Berkeley Earth. Since 2005, total global emissions have most closely tracked the 8.5 scenario. There may be good reasons to be skeptical of 0.5 late century values, but observations today don't really give us grounds to exclude it, he recently wrote. I should make my spray here. Gio, go away. Just one moment. I always get interrupted by silly cats. Gio, go away. Go away. Alright, at least I thank God for editing. Even if we avoid 8.5, the less dramatic possibilities still could lead to catastrophic warming. Jackson, the Stanford professor, warned that every emissions scenario that meets the Paris Agreement's 2.2 degrees Celsius goal assumes that humanity will soon develop technology to remove carbon directly from the atmosphere. So yeah, you've probably seen it. There are these weird kind of machines that apparently suck the carbon CO2 out of the atmosphere and convert it to whatever, oxygen maybe, but they are extremely expensive and they are not ubiquitous at all. So interest in technology, sure, why not, but the costs involved are very high. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. We should do everything possible, but I'm just saying it's expensive. Such technology has never existed at industrial scales. Even some scenarios for 3 degrees Celsius assume that at some point in the next 50 years, we will have a large-scale industrial activities to remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, he said. It's a very dangerous game, I think. We're assuming that this thing we can't do today will somehow be possible and cheaper in the future. I believe in tech, but I don't believe in magic. Again, there are some certain technologies like wave technology, right? We're using the energy of the waves in the ocean to generate energy. Again, good idea. Let's do everything possible, everything that we know. But again, it's quite expensive, and you have to look at the energy output of these things. Maybe if you have a lot of them, maybe that makes some difference. But who's going to pay for that? Obviously, of course, at the end of the day, the taxpayers will have to bear the burden. That's how it's always been throughout history. Yet, not all data suggests that we're doomed to 0.5 or equivalent amounts of warming, Hausfather cautions. If you look only at pollution from fossil fuel burning and not from land use events like deforestation, then humanity's recent record trends closer to 4.5. But I'm asking, why would you not consider deforestation in your equation? That's a very strange thing to do. You're ignoring a major... It's like, hey, let's ignore the cars and airplanes suddenly. It's going to make a difference to your number. It's going to make the number lower. But does that reflect reality, though? Not really. Deforestation and, cement production, that's another one that is not always mentioned. Again, huge emitters, but you have to consider them all. You can't just eliminate something because it's convenient for you. It's not how science works at all. So the 8.5 scenario may also become less likely in years to come, even if major polluters like the US, China, and India never pass muscular climate change policy. RCP 8.5 says that the global coal industry will eventually become 7 times bigger than it is today, which is very unlikely, let's be honest there. It's tough to claim that it is a business as usual world. It's certainly a possible world, but we also live in a world today where solar is increasingly cheaper than coal and readily available. The sun is always there, whereas the coal reserves are gonna run out eventually. So we have to deal with that at some point. But I think we might as well start early. So let's start now. Do whatever we can. In fact, like I was saying on the previous show, there are people in the world who are already very much affected by climate change. Try going to some islands in the Pacific. These are tiny nations. They have sovereign status, but the ocean water is rising. Every time there's a typhoon, it gets worse. These places are awful, by the way. The standard of living there is very bad. Sometimes they have a very kind of makeshift toilet for the whole village there. That's the level I'm talking about. But these people suffer a lot from climate change. Whereas me, okay, I don't have a job because of, health issues and stuff like that. I don't get unemployment benefits, by the way. Don't jump to that conclusion either. But I live in an apartment. It's made of brick. Even if there's a strong typhoon outside, it's very, very unlikely that something's going to happen. But these people, though, who live in huts, literally, of course, they're going to be affected. Jackson urged caution. We don't know yet what scenario we're on, he said. I think most climate scientists will tell you that we're below the 8.5 scenario. But every year that emissions increase, like they have this year, it makes the 8.5 scenario more plausible. And the article finishes. He published, so Jackson published his first academic paper in '89, just a year after the NASA scientist James Hansen first warned Congress that global warming had begun in earnest. I asked whether he thought actual emissions would ever come close to RCP 8.5. It's nuts, he said, but I used to think a lot of the things were nuts, and then they turned out to be not nuts. So that's the thing. We say all kinds of scenarios and people go, oh, that's nuts, it's absolutely unreal, and then it happens. A good example I like to give is with cell phones. I think, if you lived in the 80s, for example, there's no way you thought that, come on, in basically 15 years, let's say you go from the late 80s to 2005 or so. Come on, there's no way that people back then thought, oh, I'm going to have a mini computer in my pocket. No way. I certainly didn't. And I grew up with video games and all of the tech devices you can imagine. Even I didn't think that would be possible so quickly. And yet it was. So anyway, just bear that in mind. This is all just information. The more information you have, the more, informed you are, of course, and the more educated you are. So it doesn't mean that this is going to be true, but it's a possibility. It's a viable possibility. And that's actually all I wanted to cover today. I did it pretty quickly. Okay, well, If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on YouTube, and please don't forget to check out my book on Amazon, Beyond the Obscure. Check out my art on Redbubble. I will try to do a show next week, and like I said in pre-show, I really want to cover that guy who talks a lot of nonsense on philosophy, so we'll see how it goes. And it will be a break for me from climate change as well. So until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time. All right. I'm open to questions and answers. If you didn't understand something during the show, I'd be happy to clarify. I'll just leave it running for 5 more minutes or so. The quality is quite interesting on YouTube. It seems maybe that's because I that's better. Okay, that's just a quality setting. Okay. Yeah, I'm just reading like the first comment left on in the live video. It's interesting. Yeah, and it's true. Of course, most religious people are not paid. They in fact pay to be lied to, which to me is absolutely, that's nuts. Okay. You know, you give your 10% tithe. That's what it is. And for a lot of these people, this 10% is significant money, of course. You could use that money to pay your bills, for example, but no, they give it to a liar pastor who really doesn't need more money. I mean, some of the televangelists in the States are insanely rich people. I mean, look at Joel Osteen. That guy, Jesus Christ. Talk about rich. And then people say, well, yeah, but he makes most of his money from books. Come on. I really, really doubt that. These guys are professional liars, and we have a lot of loopholes in the tax system in the US where, you know, these people can funnel their money to the Cayman Islands or some other tax haven. I mean, one of my bosses I worked for, he worked in the Philippines and he paid a 0 tax rate, okay? That's why he's there. He's not there because he absolutely loves the Philippines and he loves the people there. Maybe he does to a certain extent, but the main reason is the 0% tax rate. So he very much enjoys it there, of course, for that purpose. So I would say just belief is, of course, not enough. You need to have evidence for something. You can't just say whatever. I mean, the burden of proof is on the person who's pushing the claim. So if you're convinced that you know, the CO2 levels are not increasing, that the average temperatures are not increasing, then please write your papers, have them peer-reviewed, and then let's talk, because then at least it would be somewhat serious to consider. Yeah, and so next week I'm gonna try to do this. I'm gonna do a mini crash course very quickly on argument validity and argument soundness, because there's a big difference there. I'm not very much interested in argument validity because an argument can be valid but absolutely crazy batshit insane. I'm interested in soundness. And this video I have kind of illustrates that point very well, because I think the guy knows validity quite well, but he seems to kind of apply it to everything. Hey, as long as it's valid, it's okay. I made my point. This is not your point. Okay, I think at this point I'm gonna end the Facebook Live. I'm just gonna leave it running on YouTube a couple more minutes, and then I will stop it as well. Thanks for watching on Facebook. Thanks for the comment. Good comment, by the way. Definitely. And well, look out for the edited version. Of course, it's always better than the live thing. All right. See you next time. Okay, Facebook is done. Post your video to your timeline. Yes. What's that? Oh. Okay. I don't know if you guys do much of this type of streaming or something, but the iPhone is actually not so simple to use. The iPhone 7, I think, or 8. I think that might be 8. I mean, I am so confused already with these numbers. Anyway, the problem I have is the jack at the bottom, so that bumps into the stick, and so there's a high chance that the wire can be damaged very quickly, which is probably actually the design purpose anyway. If we could have things that never break, then nobody would ever make any money from it. That's the reality. Okay, I'm gonna end it here. There's not much to add. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.